This is the CIT 260 individual final project presentation by Philip Willis. So I'm going to first start off talking a little bit about static versus non-static variables. Static variables are created only once during a program when the class they are associated with is created. And I'll demonstrate this over here in our code. We have written a errorview.java file, and the name of the class is errorview. And they have two different variables called error file and log file. And these are both static. So when the program is executed, these variables will be created. And only once. Non-static variables are created at the same time that the object they are associated with is created. These are also known as instance variables. And so here in our game control, we have lots of different instant variables. So such as this method here called createHero. We have defined some variables: start gold 50, strength equals 0, mana equals 0. These are examples of non-static variables. Next, I'd like to talk about arrays, ArrayList, and enums. An array has a fixed length of objects or primitive values that can be changed. So that means that inside the array can't get any longer or shorter, but the values inside the array can be changed. And also an array, you can only have one type of value. So you can only have an array of objects, array of primitive values, but you can't have mixed. An array list is an array list. An array list is unique because it can be added to and taken away from. It also has the unique ability to store different types of data. So this is different than the regular array because you can use, if you don't know how long the list is going to be, you use array list, so you can add things to the end of it, or you can take away from the array list as well. And you can have different types of data. So that's really useful in a lot of situations. An enum, this is similar to an array. The big difference is that the values in an enum never change and remain constant. So if you have a list of different items and things that will never change and you'll never add to it or take away, you would use an enum. So let's look at some examples in our code. So we have this world control, and when we create our world, we create a new world, and then we create events for that world. And we have created them in a two-dimensional array. We have also created locations. So this is how we set the events to each specific location. Location 0, 0 will be set to this event. And notice that this set event has two different items. So this will go is also a two-dimensional array. So we're picking the event type and also picking a random event out of that event type. We also have an example of an enum type. Here are in our item.java. So this is an enum. We have a list of weapons. We have a list of armor, mana potions, health potions, and magic spells. In our game, these items will never change. Their stats will always remain the same, and so therefore we use an enum to store all of this data. And then we can access each one of these by referencing the class and the item name. Next, I'd like to talk about for loops. These are used to go through and access elements stored in an array or array list. There's lots of different uses for loops. This is one I will give examples for. And array lists are very handy when you don't know or remember the length of the array you're accessing, and I'll explain that shortly. So let's go to the adventure view, and we have a method called change location. So here we have a couple of different two-dimensional arrays, and in order to access a specific location, we will use a nested for loop in order to access that. And let me explain how. This first for loop has this much scope, so it will start here and end here. And the nested for loop will start here and end here. So what happens is a variable called I starts out at 0, and the loop will continue while I is less than the locations dot length. So locations is a variable that we are assigning the locations from our world. So this locations dot length, I don't actually have to specify the exact length of this array, but the computer will get that length with this handy feature right there. And every time the loop runs, it will add one number, 1 to the integer I. So then when it goes through the loop, this will become a 1 and so forth until I is less than the length. And with this nested one, it does the same thing, but this time we've made it a variable called j. And that will continue while the locations I dot length, it will continue to run until j is no longer less than the locations I dot length. So right here we are printing out each location type. Let me change that, because that is the proper way of writing it. So this .console.println locations I, so it first inputs this I, j, so then it puts in this variable j, .get event, so it gets the event, and then it gets the event type. So then we're printing out the event type of every single location, one of these, the event type. And so once j runs through all of these, then I becomes 1, and it runs through these a bunch of times, and then I becomes 2, runs through these a bunch of times until everything's done, and it prints out on the screen. Next, I'd like to talk about throwing and catching runtime errors. So oftentimes throughout your code, you're getting input from the user. Because, humans are not perfect, we need a way to watch for errors. We can write code to look for these errors and handle them properly. So the first part of this is throwing. So once the error is found, we handle it by throwing it up the chain of command. And I will demonstrate this shortly. Propagating This action takes all errors and keeps moving them up the calling hierarchy and until they are finally caught. So catching, this is the final resting area for the errors being thrown. A programmer can now decide, what to do with the error once it's caught. So in our tavern control, we have some examples of this. So here we have the tavern owner giving a bunch of different responses depending on the level of the hero. So we have this a method called owner response. It returns a string of characters, and it's passed integer, which we call it level of hero. So there's all these different sayings here, and we have some checks. So if the level of hero, for whatever reason, if it's less than 1, then that's an error. So we want to throw a new, and we've called it tavern control exception, and this is the error that we're going to throw. So it says the level of hero was too low. So instead of returning a random number or something, we've actually are able to have a string of characters tell us what the error was. Same down here on line 45, if level of hero is greater than 50, then we can throw a new tavern control exception saying the level of the hero was too high. And then it continues on. If it passes all of these, we continue on to the logic that we've programmed into it and then return the owner saying and the index number, which is this number that will generate. So let's take a look at this. Throwing, so this is where the error starts. And then it throws it to the beginning of the method. And the method then propagates and throws the exception. And what will happen is it will throw to where this is being called. So we go to projects. And we have set up our program to catch everything in the view layers. So here we are calling tavern control.owner response level of hero. And what we've done is we've surrounded it with a try catch. And so first it tries level of hero equals 12, string result tavern control. So we've passed it the level of hero. And if any errors come back to this, then it's going to catch those errors here and print out the message that we've told it to. Next, I would like to talk about character versus byte stream classes. So IO streams are used in Java to read and write data to a file in a sequential manner, character by character or byte by byte. So a character stream class, these allow you to read and write character data regardless of the format that the data is stored in. And a byte stream class, it reads and writes binary data 1 byte at a time in sequential order. So I am a lot better at reading characters than I am at ones and zeros in bytes. And so this character stream class is much easier to read. And so if you're going to be saving data to a file, it's nice to have it in character format. So let's give an example of writing character data to an external file. Here we have a class called print report view, and we have a method called monster report. So we have a variable called value, which starts off as an empty string, and it then the program asks you, where would you like to save your file? It gets the input, and value is assigned to the input from the user. And you notice that we have this try catch again. So if there's an error reading the line, it will print out that message. And then we have another variable called file path, which will equal value. So we have a two-dimensional array of actors. We get the actors. And another variable called monster stats. Oh, look at this, a nested for loop. So we are accessing every location within this two-dimensional array of actors, and we are adding them to this variable called monster stats. So we get the actor's name, IR, so I will be 0, R will be 0, so the first one go through will be the actor 0, 0, and then the next will be 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, all the way until this is now 1, and it'll start off at 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, and same thing applies for this get max hit points and get gold. So then we've set up this monster report variable with a bunch of strings, and we've added the monster stats variable. So when we print the report, you'll see this banner of monster report and these column headings, monsters, their hit points, and their gold. Same values that we're getting out of the get name, get max hit points, and getting the gold. And this is where we are actually saving the information to a file. So we have a data type called file output stream, and we've defined this variable called FOPS, which starts off at null. And so then FOPS is then and we do this because we have this variable used in these try catches, and so you want to substantiate the variable before you use them in the try catches. So this FOPS will be a new output stream, and the variable we're passing it is the file path. So this is the name of where you want to output the character. So here, character stream class. So and if there's an error, then it's going to print a stack trace. So then you can see what kind of error was occurred. We have the next part of this is we have a new variable that has a data type of object output stream, and we create a new object output stream and then pass it FOPS, which is what we created up here. And then of course we have the try catch around that. And then finally we have output dot write object monster report. So this writes the monster report that we've defined up here to an object. And then finally we close the file stream, which is a very important part, because if you don't close it, then Windows or other operating systems will potentially they lock the files that you're writing to, and eventually Windows will no longer be able to write or read from files because they're all locked. And then we print on the screen this .console.println monster report. So then the user can see the report, what the report was that you printed. So the fun part. So our project was a lot of fun this semester, and what we have done is created a RPG text-based game that you can fight monsters. So I will start a new game. I'll call my hero Wilbur, and then it asks you some questions in creating your hero. And then it asks you how much gold you want to start with. 1, 2, 3. And now this 50,000, that's entered as a string. And in our code, we've actually parsed that into an integer and assigned that to a variable. So here's our town. So there's a list of a bunch of different stuff that you can do. Let's go take a look at character stats. So these are a bunch of different variables that we've assigned to a hero, and some of these are actually inherited from actor as well. And these are all instance variables because they were created when we ran this create new character function. And as you can see, our gold is now 50,000. So let's go to the blacksmith and spend some of our gold. So let's buy a weapon. We will buy a short sword. So now it says, oh, it's been a pleasure to serve you. Thank you for your business. Your attack is now 60 and your defense is now 0. Well, we can't have 0 defense. So let's go buy some armor. And we're going to buy dragon bone. And you can see over here that the defense will be 150. Possibly. Okay, let's go kill something. So what we have the option of going to the high mountain, dark forest, stormy jungle, or the plains. So let's go to this. Let's go to the high mountain and search for monster. Ooh, we found a giant. He has 6,000 life, and his current health is 6,000. His defense is 150. He has this much attack and 0 spell power, and he'll give me 34 experience and 600 gold. Let's try attacking him. And he kills me. And that's the game. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.